Alright guys, so to start off with, I have my rough sketch ready. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to create new layer, and I'm picking up script from calligraphy brush set. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create the shape for the feather based on the rough sketch that I have right here. And I'm just going to create that shape, and I'm just going to fill it in with the base solid color that I chose for the feather. So obviously the colors depend on you, but yeah, that's what I'm doing here. I'm just creating the shape and filling it in with the base color, and I'm doing the same for the stem of the feathers. I don't know what you call it, but yeah, I'm doing the same for the stem of the feather, making sure that the feather part of it and the stem part of it are on the separate layers, because we are going to be shading those, and we will need to enable alpha lock for both of the layers. So make sure you're doing it on separate layers. Now for the stem part of it, I am using this really grayish kind of brown. I don't know the exact name for the color, but yeah, you get the idea. So yeah, that's the first step. So the next step is to pick up technical pen, and what we are gonna do is we are gonna draw these feather hairs down at the bottom, and I'm doing it on the similar layer where I created the shape for the feather. So I am gonna do that using technical pen. Now here you want to add some thick and some thin feather hairs. So for that, what I did is I actually played around with pressure sensitivity. So wherever I wanted thicker ones, I was putting more pressure onto the screen, and wherever I wanted really thin and really light ones, I was putting really light pressure onto the screen. But if you're new to Procreate or digital art in general, and you're not really used to pressure sensitivity yet, you can always play around with the opacity of the brush and you will get the same results. So yeah, just play around with the opacity and the size of the brush to get the exact same look. So I hope this is making sense. And the next step is to enable alpha lock in the similar layer, and I'm going to pick up soft air brush, and I'm going to pick up a darker version of the base color, more towards grays, but it really depends on you. You can saturate it a little bit if you want to add a little bit of depth onto the feather, as I'm doing right here. So later I realized I should have added more color to the gray, or it could have been more saturated, but it is fine because it turned out to be pretty good. So yeah, it depends on you. You can just play around with your own colors. So that's the second step, and also make sure to blend it out. The next step is to create another layer, adding clipping mask to it, and I'm again picking up technical pen, and in this time around we are going to be adding feather hairs under the shape or in the shape, and I'm using again the similar color that I used to add shadows to the feather, and a little bit darker than that, I guess. And I am adding these really random feather hairs in the shape. So you don't really have to be perfect about it, because we are going to be blending it out with the blending tool. And when I use blending tool, I'm always using soft brush from airbrushing brush set. So just start blending it out. So now what it will do is, when you blend these out, make sure the size of the brush is not too large, because we don't want to spread out the color all over the feather. We just want to make sure that the feather hair is nicely blended in its place, and also we are spreading some color, some dark color around that feather hair, just to add a little bit more depth to it. So I hope that makes sense. I'm just going to speed up the process a little here, because I'm just blending it out, so there's nothing complex here. Now I'm going to add another layer with clipping mask right underneath the layer where we added these feather hairs, and I'm picking up a lighter color of the base color, or lighter version of the base color, and I actually ended up placing it above the layer where we created the feather hairs. And here I'm using soft brush from airbrushing brush set, and lightly I'm just adding these highlights kind of thing right in between all the feather hairs that we created in the previous layer. So that's what I'm doing right here. You can also go ahead and use just the base color just to clean up the area a little bit, but I went ahead and used a lighter color as compared to the base color. So that's what I'm doing right here. So here what I did is I went back to the layer where we created feather hairs with the darker color, and I changed the layer mode to multiply just to darken it up a little bit more because it just looked really light and dull. And I also made sure that it's not too dark, so I just reduced the opacity to 67%, so you can just play around with layer modes as well. Now I'm coming back to the feather layer where we created the shape for the feather, and I am picking up eraser and technical pen for the eraser, and I'm just erasing some parts, and I'm starting from the edge of the shape and coming inwards, and it just creates this really nice realistic looking kind of effect to the feather. So what we're doing is we're just erasing some parts of the feather from the feather shape, and we're using technical pen for the eraser. So you want to make sure you're doing that, and you want to also make sure you are coming from the edge of the shape towards the inside the feather. I hope this is making sense. I'm just trying my best to explain this part. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right here. So the next step is to start shading the stem for the feather, and I'm picking up soft brush again. So how I shade it is I just add this little highlight right in the middle of this stem, and then I'm just gonna pick up black color or any dark color and just gonna add it around the edges of the stem like so. And I'm also gonna be adding some white color right around the edges. You guys will see right here on the video what I'm talking about, just to make it look more realistic and just to make it look as if it's just popping out of the feather. Not really popping out, but just looking a little 3D-ish. So I hope this is making sense. It is not at all difficult. So if you haven't watched my video about how to actually turn your 2D drawings into 3D just by shading and everything, I will give you guys a link down in the description so that you guys can go ahead and watch that video. That will really help you guys a lot. The next step is to create another layer right underneath the layer where we created the basic shape for the feather, and I am here adding some feather hair around the edges so that it is not looking too harsh right around the edges of the feather. So I hope this is making sense. The process is similar to the process of painting hair, in my eyes at least. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just making sure the edges are looking nice and natural and flowy for the feather. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right here. And I also went ahead and I started darkening up the shadows as well, and the ones that I added initially, I just made sure that I'm adding more shadows there. And I also went ahead and picked up light brush from Luminance brush set, and yeah, I also added some highlights on the feather just to add a little bit more of depth to the feather because it was still again looking dull. So yeah, after doing that, the feather started looking pretty nice and realistic. I don't want to call it completely realistic because that's not the look that I was going for, but yeah, semi-realistic I can call it. So yeah, that's what I'm doing here. And just to make it a little, just to add a little something, what I did is I created new layer underneath every other layer that I have, and I painted it with the base color of the feather, and I just added Gaussian blur, and I changed the layer mode to add, just to add this glowy kind of effect right underneath the feather that we have. And I picked up light pen from Luminance brush set, and I started adding these little sparkle kind of thing around the glow. So just a little something that I really like to do no matter what I'm painting. So yeah, it is totally up to you what you want to do with your feather. But yeah, that's how actually you draw and paint feather on Procreate. Not just Procreate, you can actually follow the similar steps and use these steps on some other software. So yeah, it's just not fixated on Procreate. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, follow me on Instagram. If you do, create something out of this tutorial, tag me on Instagram. I would love to see that. Other than that, I will see you guys in my next tutorial.